think I got to get on with you and do? Yeah, whatever. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're out there on the East Coast living in the future. I'm Eric Lindquist here at Awesemo.com. This is the MLB Strategy Show. We am sitting alongside one Adam Scherer, the player of the Baltimore Orioles, the winner of tournaments and cash yesterday, going for the double dip and NBA, I believe. What a day for you.
Yeah, it was a nice day back from vacation, so glad to get back to it. Hopefully it lasts a little bit. Wasn't real thrilled with how much Baltimore I had going into the slate yesterday, but ended up working out, so had fun.
I mean, I don't know how you can play any Baltimore and ever feel good about anything in any way, shape, or form. I mean, those top guys, we had talked on the show 1 through 4. I mean, they hit the ball hard, and it seemed like that 3-man between Mountcastle, and then I can't remember the last guy, but it kind of all worked out pretty darn well at the top end. And you go through your process. We each have a process. Everybody has a process that they go through for the day, but you kind of filtered out your lineups, and it ended up being Baltimore up top. Yes.
Yeah, it was a lot of Houston, a lot of Boston, a lot of Baltimore, which you and I were talking before the show. Like, it's not something that I like intentionally did or decided on. It was just, I think they were kind of like the cheapest team that wasn't getting ownership that was letting me get to Bauer and Peralta together. So they fit in nicely with some of the more expensive stacks. They fit in nicely as a full stack. And then fortunately, they actually scored some runs.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I also love the fact that, when we get back into baseball here and we don't have like complete chalk, go completely nuts. I think it's nice to be able to have some of the lineup building, the playing of the MLB DFS winning to the top rather than just, hey, this is the best spot to go, and we go from that direction. I will say we've got a 15 gamer today. I'm starting to refresh a little bit of the stuff as the DFS top stacks tool gets updated, as we're getting the top pitchers tool. As we get into this 15 gamer, we are going to fly. As you get into the room here, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. You know the drill by now. We are presented today by OddsShopper. That is the best place you can go to shop your odds and find your betting lines that change drastically. And we've got the MLB pitchers strikeouts tool. We've got the home run tool that can help you go back and forth between those two spots to be able to find little edges here and there in the baseball betting market. It's just one of the better tools that you're going to find. It's getting tweaked here. It's just brand spanking new. Definitely check that out. But we'll jump over to OddsShopper a little bit later. We got a lot of baseball to talk about, so we'll start it right off here. We've got Miami minus 105. That's basically, it's minus 105 on both spots. At Philadelphia, 8.5 runs here on this side. I'm going to the top. We have it all set. I think I found him. There we go. Trevor Rogers, a lefty spinner, going 9,700 over on DK, going up against Vincent Velasquez on the other side. I was going to say, I thought Vincent Velasquez was a guy, even before we updated the ownership here, that I was going to probably be getting to as an SP2. But 4.8 implied runs here for the Miami Marlins. That's a hefty number for them in most spots. I know Vincent Velasquez hasn't been good, but 7,200 is 7,200, I think, on this slate where you're trying to make Brandon Woodruff work with some other stacks. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a decent matchup against Miami. You're talking about Velasquez, who's not really going deep in the games, which is an issue. He hasn't thrown more than 86 pitches in any of his last 5 starts. So you don't really like to see that, on top of the fact that, like you said, he tends to get hit relatively hard. He's not very good, but he does give you some strikeout stuff. 26% strikeout percentage to righties, 25.7% to lefties this year. So it's certainly not a safe spot, but like you said, there's a lot of stuff to pay up for on this slate. You have a Coors game. You have Brandon Woodruff at 11K on DraftKings. So there's places to spend money. And I think if you are going to pay down or go mid-range to pitcher, you're typically going to want to at least look to guys that can get strikeouts, because like one thing people always talk about or seem to talk about is like safety in pitchers, as far as going to pitchers that are, against a team with a relatively low implied run total. But it seems like people kind of overlook that probably the safest, the for lack of a better word, the safest thing that you can look for in pitching is strikeouts, because guys that are going to get strikeouts can overcome one bad inning where they give up a couple of runs. When you go to those pitchers that don't get strikeouts, but they're in a better spot, if they just happen to get unlucky, they're not making their way back from it. So the strikeout stuff is nice for Velasquez, and it makes him, I think, a relatively appealing option at his salary.
On the other side of that, Trevor Rogers, a fantastic pitcher over the course of the season for the most part. I really like what he's been doing. .330 expected slugging, 29.4% K percentage. I don't know. I just don't ever really like targeting a bunch of these Phillies. I mean, there's enough Ks to be had here looking at guys like Bowman and Hoskins, but for the most part, it's pretty flat. It's not the most intriguing spot to be targeting a guy that just feels very, very expensive on this slate.
Yeah, it's a price point that I think is kind of difficult to get to. The one thing that I would point to, though, is looking at the top pitchers tool. We have Trevor Rogers with about a 9% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on the slate, only projected for about 2% ownership right now. And, you mentioned that he's done a very good job of limiting power, only a 137 expected ISO to righties. 0.059 expected ISO to lefties. He's struck out 29.5% of hitters from both sides of the plate. So if the ownership does stay that low, it is a spot where I think in tournaments you could look because, for example, he's not Brandon Woodruff, but he's not going to get nearly as much ownership. He's giving you a $1,300 discount on DraftKings on a day where there are some bats to pay for. So that's a spot where I could see getting to in tournaments. But again, just from like an optimal build standpoint or cash standpoint, it's a pretty difficult price.
And then hitters, again, I think that this is a larger implied total than what I was expecting for Miami. But part of that, again, Vincent Velasquez definitely gives up hard contact, 90.6 mile per hour average exit velocity this season, 40.9% hard hit percentage, 428 expected slugging, and walks dudes at a 13.3% clip. That isn't super intriguing. So you could get that line moving, keep it moving. And Garrett Cooper back in the lineup here, where 50.8% hard hit percentage, one of the bigger sluggers on this team back in the mix. So I don't know. Are you going to be playing some Miami possibly today?
I think mostly interested in them kind of as like one-offs or mini stacks. I think the price on Jazz Chisholm, if he's leading off, is pretty appealing. Getting some decent pop from the left side there. Adam Duvall is at a reasonable price point in the middle of the lineup. Going back to the start of last season, Duvall has 349 plate appearances against right-handed pitching, 256 expected ISO, 322 expected WOBA. So, giving you some power there. It's, on a 15-game slate, not really the team that I want to stack the most. But when you're talking about a pitcher like Velasquez that does give up home runs, you can certainly look to, just hopefully grab one or two from guys that have power in the Miami lineup like Chisholm and Duvall.
I'm seeing quite a bit of ownership over on DK for him too. 6.7%. That's a lot on a slate like this where their top stack potential is only 3.2%. On the Phillies side, we kind of know a lot of the known dudes, but I don't really feel like picking on Trevor Rogers in this spot, even if I'm not going to play a bunch of him at 9,600. I just think there's so many other better spots to go to on this slate.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I don't really see it. I mean, right now we have Philadelphia with a 1.5% chance of being the top stack. You just really have to respect what Rodgers has done this year because it's not like he's just a strikeout guy that also gives up power. He's a strikeout guy that also hasn't given up power basically at all. So you're really, and he's not getting ownership either. So he kind of just doesn't, or picking on him doesn't really check any of the boxes. He's not a guy that gives up home runs. He's not a guy getting a lot of ownership. So you're not leveraging against the field. You're kind of just hoping the Phillies randomly blow up Trevor Rogers, which certainly could happen, but there's 29 other teams to choose from that I think you can make, and a lot of them you'll be able to make much better arguments for.
I think if you're going to take your shots with them, 8,700 over on FanDuel does make some sense. I don't completely hate that price tag, but yeah, the price point on DK just makes that a little bit unappealing. Let's keep it moving. We've got Angels plus 143 going into Yankee Stadium once more. 10 total runs here for this game. We've got Andrew Heaney on one side and Jameson Taillon on the other. Both pitchers we know the names of, but my God, just no ownership going either of their directions because, again, they're just terrible matchups for each of them.
Yeah, sorry, I was plugging my microphone in that I had not plugged in before the show. So, yeah, should
you
be
sound
good
so
now.
lovely now. See,
yeah.
It's the small things in life.
Yeah, it should be better.
Okay.
But yeah, tough matchup for both of these guys. Andrew Heaney, a guy that certainly gets a lot of strikeouts, but he's one that does give up power as well. And now you're getting a lot of right-handed power from this Yankees lineup so far this season. Heaney struck out 32.9% of righties, so obviously the upside is there. But he's also allowed a 213 expected ISO, and you're looking at guys from the right side, Aaron Judge with a 350 expected ISO against left-handed pitching this year. Sanchez at 242. Giancarlo Stanton, slow start this season, but in general, just obviously phenomenal power. Luke Voit, 229 expected ISO. Urshela is at 173. Torres is at 196. Like, there's so much power here. There is certainly strikeout upside, but you're not really getting a price discount on Heaney. If he were priced down for the Yankees in like 6,500 or something, you can make an argument for just hoping that the strikeouts outweigh the home runs, but you're paying a premium for him in a really, really difficult matchup.
And the weather, again, looks fantastic. 90 degrees, 60% humidity, wind blowing out, pretty much everything going against somebody like Heaney, where he's just going to be giving up hard contact, throws the ball at 17.3 degree launch angle on the season as well. So the ball is going to be going high. It's going to be going far, and that's not good against all of these righties. This murderer's row you have at the top of this Yankees lineup. On the other side of it, Jameson Taillon, do you have any desire to play him whatsoever? 24.8% K percentage. He's kind of there. The price point seems like a spot where you can maybe pivot around from either like a Blake Snell, who I think is going to be popular, Vincent Velasquez, who we just talked about. He's kind of like in that dead middle between those two.
Yeah, I think he's really similar to Velasquez as far as like level of confidence that I have in him. The strikeout stuff is decent. He's been better against righties than lefties this year, as you would expect, but 26% strikeout percentage against righties, only allowing a 140 expected ISO, whereas against lefties, 23.3% strikeout percentage is a few points lower, and he's allowed a 261 expected ISO. When you look at the Angels' projected lineup, obviously you have Ohtani and Walsh as power bats from the left side, but other than that, it's probably going to be pretty right-handed heavy. So, and the other lefties aren't very good. So it is a spot that I think sets up decently for Taillon. I think the price point's reasonable. So again, not a huge vote of confidence as far as like I'm really confident he's going to have a good game, but I think the price point's where it should be. I think he's a serviceable SP2.
Shohei Ohtani is under 5K on DraftKings today.
His salary came down.
What are we doing here? Who's running this crap? Who's doing this?
Yeah, it's pretty bad, but just plug Ohtani in again. Like I just said, Taillon, like he's not a gas can. He's a perfectly fine pitcher, but the guy's allowed a 237 actual ISO, 261 expected ISO to lefties this year. Strikeout percentage is lower than it is against righties, as I mentioned. And Ohtani is just one of the best hitters in baseball at 4,900. There's really nothing not to like about him.
26 overs, 1.031 OPS, whatever. Whatever. I guess they just want us to be able to play him affordably every single slate from now until eternity. I just don't know how you go from 5,700 in Tropicana to ending up under 5K against the Yankees. I don't even really know what to say. The rest of this lineup, I think we know Jared Walsh, definitely an option at 4,400. Rendon would be a little bit more contrarian. He's had a down year, but we do have a track record. I believe it was you and Greg talking about that yesterday in the morning, where Anthony Rendon, we have such a track record of him being one of the best hitters in baseball. And it's hard to really not just say that he's complete dust because of a poor beginning to the season.
Yeah, I mean, it is concerning. Like, even if you go back to last season, Rendon's got 308 plate appearances now against right-handed pitching, only a 131 expected ISO, 327 expected WOBA, like not numbers that you're really excited about. And Jameson Taillon, like we've said, is better against righties. So Rendon's not someone I'm super interested in as far as like a one-off goes. I think you'll probably find better third base options, but he's certainly someone where if you are stacking the Angels, of course you want Ohtani, of course you want Walsh. Rendon's naturally the third guy there just based on his track record, even though he has really struggled recently.
And then the Yankee side, I mean, just play the guys, right?
Yeah, all of them.
Just play every dude. You're here for all the great analysis that we have. Just play Yankees. That seems like a fun spot. Is there any like one guy on the back half like that you might be a little bit higher on? Like I think Gio Urshela, just because he's a little bit more expensive than Gleyber Torres. I mean, Gleyber Torres is just going to keep ruining my life here at 3,500 from now until eternity.
Yeah, I think that there's a good chance in tournaments Urshela is like one of the lowest owned Yankees because, of course, people are going to want to go to the middle of that order, and then they'll probably use Torres or Andujar for salary relief or even Frazier at the bottom. But I do think this is a team where if you're stacking them, you can use the bottom of the order because people typically will stay away. Just even on a team with a 5.5 implied run total, they're going to be hesitant to go to the bottom of the order. So using guys like Urshela batting 6 at a somewhat elevated price point in tournaments, or going down to Andujar and Frazier at 8 and 9. Those guys can still get it done. Of course, they're not as strong a play as Judge or Stanton, but they're also not in the same price range. So the nice thing about stacking the Yankees is it's not very difficult to differentiate within your stack because there's legitimately 9 guys that have home run upside.
That usually helps in baseball. Definitely going to have a little bit of Yankee exposure for sure. And it doesn't seem like there's going to be a ton of stacks that we got to be super concerned about the ownership getting out of hand. But 4.5% top stack potential in DK, only 2% ownership share. Definitely signed me up to get over the field on that. Moving it along here. We are making good time already. We're going to beat out the 8-game slate we had yesterday, I think. Tampa Bay -110 going to Washington, 9.5 total runs here in this spot. on one side of the mound. On the top end, we've got Rich Hill, a lefty. Thank God. Maybe Kyle Schwarber won't hit 2 home runs today. That'd be nifty. And Joe Ross on the other side of it, no interest whatsoever going up against this lefty team of, Meadows, Choi, Brendan Lau probably going to be leading off. Talk to me a little bit about the pitching.
Yeah, so I mean, Rich Hill's priced up to where I'm not super excited about him. Strikeout stuff's been fine this year, but you do have almost a 5 implied run total for the Nats. Not really the most favorable lineup to go up against. Joe Ross on the other side, not really cheap either. Again, it's hot and humid here in the DC area. I'm 30, 40 miles away. It's pretty disgusting outside already. So ball should be flying again. Joe Ross has actually struck out almost 28% of lefties this year compared to 19.5% of righties. So kind of a weird split there. But, you are getting a nice ballpark bump for Tampa Bay, looking to guys like Brandon Lau, Randy Arozarena, Austin Meadows. These are guys that they're expensive, but they do give you some upside here. I definitely think they can do some damage against Ross.
And Rich Hill, as you said, hey, I think looking at this Washington lineup, we'll see if Zimmerman ends up in there, but Josh Bell more than likely. I mean, all of those guys at the top end of that order just hitting the ball so hard. I don't know. I don't want to be really picking on Rich Hill by any means, but as you said, it's good hitting weather. Wouldn't be shocking to see a spot where there was some power given up by Hill to some of these top end bats. But Tampa Bay, I think, would probably be the side that I'd be a little bit more interested on. I haven't been picking on Joe Ross as much of late, but 433 expected slugging here on the season, still probably going to give up some hits here and there. And I think this Tampa Bay lineup is potent enough where they can maybe get it done.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, Ross doesn't stand out to me as, one of the best guys to pick on, and that's reflected in the top stack tool as well. Tampa Bay coming in with a 3.4% top stack percentage, looking like kind of, middle of the road, like top 10 stack, not getting a ton of ownership, and you wouldn't expect them to. But, again, there is some power in this lineup with Lau, Arozarena, Meadows, but they're also expensive on a slate where there's pitching to pay up for, there's other bats to pay up for. So it should keep their ownership down. They look like a team that I'll probably end up with, some 2-3 man stacks, or just even using them as one-offs, the guys that have power.
Seattle Mariners taking on the Toronto Blue Jays in that little AAA ballpark up in Buffalo. 4.4 implied runs for Seattle, 6.1 for Toronto. One of the heftier little numbers on the slate. That's because Chris Flexen is on one side of the mound. I have no desire to play him ever, pretty much. So there's that. And Robbie Ray on the other side, definitely have some interest in him. If you're not going to be going to that top end to get up to Brandon Woodruff, it's really hard to not look at all of the things that Robbie Ray started to do. You never really know what you're going to get. He's been such a mixed bag at times, but one thing that's always existed is that K percentage, 31% here, a nice little hefty number, giving up some hard hits on the season, 48.3% hard hit percentage. But I think that's mitigated a little bit by how bad the Seattle offense is at creating power.
Yeah, I think so too. He's been really good this season, striking out about 31% of hitters to both sides of the plate. The concern that you always run into with Ray is that it can be difficult for him to get into games because he throws so many pitches between his strikeouts and his walks. But you have seen the walks be a little bit more in check this season. And, he's getting around the 100 pitches normally. So I do think Robbie Ray's in a good spot. We know the Mariners offense isn't very good. One of the lower implied run totals on the slate at less than 4 runs for Seattle. So I do think that Ray looks very good.
And then, do we just jump over to the offenses? I feel like we're on absolute cruise control here early on, but I think it's just so easy for me to look at Seattle, looking at this lineup and say, okay, do I really want to be picking on Robbie Ray here? Maybe have a one-off of Haniger, who I just think is a phenomenal hitter in any spot. So nothing really changes for me. I don't really like going to Seattle in many slates, and definitely not today.
Yeah, same boat for me. Like, obviously, if you're playing 150 lineups and you end up with some Mitch Haniger, it's fine. He's a good hitter, and there's plenty of power upside here. But there's 30 offenses on this slate. Even if Mitch Haniger hits a home run, there's going to be plenty of other guys you can find that are also going to hit home runs today. So, it's pretty tough, I think, to really pick on Ray here.
So Toronto, right now we're seeing some leverage that can be had. I'm going over to FanDuel, 7.1% top stack percentage, 5% ownership share for them. So one of the nicer points of leverage for a team that really has a nice top stack potential. Over on DraftKings, kind of the same boat. You're looking at a number of 6.6% of the top stack potential, only 3% ownership. I mean, they're priced up there. That's really what it comes down to. On FanDuel, a little bit easier to get to and be able to pair maybe with a Robbie Ray at 10-8 or a Brandon Woodruff at 11-4, a little bit more doable. But these are the times in tournaments where I just want to overinvest on an offense that is in such a good spot if people are not going to be going there because of pitching.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Chris Flexen hasn't really been good in the majors. His numbers aren't terrible. 222 expected ISO to righties, 151 to lefties. But, this is someone that he's kind of just like a tweener. Like, he was good in Japan, but he hasn't been very good in the majors throughout his career. And now you get this Toronto team in a small ballpark that has a ton of power. And the pricing is kind of nice because, like, at the top of the order for Toronto, you have expensive bats in Semien, Bichette, and Guerrero. But going towards the bottom, this is another team that pretty much like 1 through 8, there's power in this lineup. You can go down to Kevin Biggio, Grichuk, Gurriel. George Springer's only $4,200 on DraftKings. There's a lot of ways that you can stack this team and not spend all of your salary. Not really overspend. You kind of balance it out so that you can get Guerrero in, but then balance it out with a cheaper guy towards the bottom and still have a lot of power upside there. So, I think that if the ownership does stay where it is, certainly Coors Field is Coors Field, but this is a park that is a very favorable hitter's park, and you're getting a pitcher in Flexen that doesn't miss a lot of bats. So you're going to get balls in play. He's given up power, particularly to right-handed hitters this year, which, sets up nicely for Bichette, Guerrero, Hernandez, Springer. Like, this is a lineup that has tons of right-handed power.
So Yankees, we're just going to say the Yankees play all the dudes. Toronto Blue Jays play all the dudes. Is there anybody that you wouldn't want to have in the middle of it? For me, that just becomes, if Santiago Espinal shows up in a lineup, I just never play him.
Yeah, I mean, after how much Ramon Urias had last night, I'm not even going to comment on that. But yeah, I mean, it's like with Toronto, if someone like Espinal does show up, you can use him as filler because he's on a team that has a good chance of scoring a lot of runs. But the guys that you're singling out is like one-offs and mini stacks are the guys that have actual power, like most other hitters in the lineup.
I think my favorite thing from yesterday from the Slack was Ramon when he hit a 366-foot double off the wall. LOL. It's like, yeah this dude.
It would have felt so dirty, like getting a huge pay bump because Ramon Urias, it's like a 9th inning home run, but it also would have been nice.
It was like on Sunday. I normally go through and there's certain 9 hitters. It's just like I have no business even rostering this person. And for whatever reason, I had Andrelton Simmons, who never makes my Minnesota Twins lineup. He ends up going yard in his first at bat. Hits like a 3-run shot. It's like, dude with no power never gets anywhere with it. You feel a little bit dirty in those spots, but you got to also find some of those low-owned dudes that can maybe get it done for you. I mean, obviously he was not going to be owned, so there's always some viability going that direction. It's not like playing Miles Straw at 20% ownership. Like, that would never feel really good for me. I don't really know where to go with that. That's literally just a sidecar. I'm just talking to myself here at this point in time. That's fine. Moving along, should we keep it going? I think we should. Actually, we should talk about OddsShopper quick again, because I referenced a little bit of that top stacks, the new K percentage, the new K tool that we have there, the new home run tool that we have. They're going to start getting implemented there on OddsShopper. But if you look over at the player props, you can basically see directly on the screen the chances. We have Adam Duvall sitting there at one end of it. We've got strikeouts by pitcher. I'm going to pull that up here as well. We've got producer Tyler behind the glass doing a great job of showing you all the goodies that we have with this new MLB player props tool. You can basically just kind of sort it and see how many unders you want to be playing on a given slate. Right now at the top end, expected ROI, Carlos Martinez, his under of 4.5 strikeouts. It looks like it's going to be the best bet that you can possibly make on the board amongst all of those plays. Andrew Heaney, another guy that is actually coming up with an over. We talked about the potential he has to get Ks in this lineup against the Yankees. We also talked about the power potential that exists there. Being able to kind of take a look at those numbers for both home runs, where it's not going to be as pronounced. You're not going to see as many small edges to find, but for sure strikeouts, especially now with the sticky stuff in the aftermath of that. Finding some positive places to put your money, put it to work to supplement your DFS income, to be able to help you out here and there. Definitely be utilizing that on the daily. Also can show you where people might possibly, in the same way that the top pitchers tool helps you to figure out which pitchers might be going overvalued or undervalued. Definitely take a look at that as we're going along. But Next game we have on the slate, San Diego Padres minus 143 at Cincinnati, going into Great American Ballpark. 10 total runs here in this spot. On one side, Blake Snell, lefty spinner, 19.5% percent owned. Good Lord. I tell you what, it is definitely 8:30 a.m. out here on the West Coast, but Blake Snell on one side, Tony Santillan on the other. I have desire to play Blake Snell here. I definitely do. And I know that Cincinnati having a near 5 implied run total doesn't look nice, but Blake Snell been working a little bit longer into games here of late. Kind of think that he's maybe turning a corner. This is a terrible ballpark. There's no question about that. 5.29 ERA, 1.55 whip, whatever. But 99 pitches that we saw against the Dodgers, he was pretty effective in that start. I have some desire to go here. Am I crazy?
No, not at all. I guess counter argument I would make, because we know how good Blake Snell is. We know this guy can rack up strikeouts. This is someone that, used to be like a 9,500, 10K, 11K pitcher with Tampa. The strikeout stuff's still been fine. He struck out 39% of lefties, 27% of righties this year. All that's good. But the concern I have, I guess, if I had to make an argument against him outside of, ballpark and all of that, is that this is someone who, he does have some starts recently where he's gone deep. 4 starts ago, he went 7 innings against the Mets. But more often than not, you're getting like 5 innings out of this guy still, because he's so inefficient with his pitches. He strikes guys out, but he also walks guys. And when you have other options in this price range as well, I think the ownership becomes really important. Like, you're looking at 19.5% ownership going to Snell, only about 11% going to Velasquez, Jameson Taillon getting like none. I think that looking at like the top pitchers tool, Snell's got the best chance of being a top 2 pitcher out of that group, but it's not by a huge margin. Velasquez is in that same boat. We actually have Caleb Smith at a similar spot as well. Jameson Taillon, lower, but 7% to 4%. Like, I think it's one spot where in tournaments I will be paying attention to it, because of Snell's ownership. Like, if Snell is going to be the Eli Rogers from yesterday, where there's a bunch of similar pitchers in this price range in terms of range of outcomes, and the field is just going to say Blake Snell projects like half a point better, so I'm going to play him. There's no real reason not to be just kind of mixing in these other guys at the expense of some of your Snell exposure in tournaments.
I also, it's the first, they had a day off yesterday. It's a decent bullpen behind him here too. If he's going to go 4 or 5 innings, you're going to get toasted there. I think that FanDuel price is just begging you to play it though, and to try to risk for it, 8,100, but maybe a little bit actually more expensive, more of a DK play, I think, for me today. Just the chance of him being able to get that extra bump for the quality start just seems a little bit more difficult compared to the security you have in a guy like Brandon Woodruff or Robbie Ray, who not only rack up Ks, but definitely go deeper into games on the daily. On the other side of that, Tony Santillan, do we even talk about him today?
I don't think so.
Okay, that seems like a great idea. I'm glad you're here. Looking at this Padres lineup, Tommy Pham, Trent Grisham, Jake Cronenworth, Fernando Tatis, all these dudes up top. Feel like this is a pretty good spot to be going to on this slate. I was very curious what their ownership was going to be here. I'm pulling up the top stacks tool here, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to be that pronounced compared to what it's very high actually on DK. Good Lord. Are you kidding me? 33% for a 6K Fernando Tatis. Oh boy, this is going to be fun. Yeah,
lots of ownership going there, but it is obviously a good ballpark. San Diego with a 5.5 implied run total. Tatis, of course, is really good. He doesn't get the Shohei Ohtani price discount, but still, shortstop a position that's pretty tough to fill out in terms of upside usually too. So, obviously like the San Diego guys. I am pulling up a little bit more stuff on Santillan. I didn't realize he was as stretched out as he is. He threw 104 pitches on the 24th. Had a strong start against Atlanta. Still not somebody that I'm looking to go to though. In a tough matchup against the Padres. He has allowed, in a limited sample in the majors this year, plenty of power, particularly to righties, a 323 expected ISO, 189 expected ISO to lefties. So, he is stretched out. It is someone that, if he's pitching well, can go relatively deep into this game. But the Padres are just such a dangerous offense in a good park that I'm still much more interested in the Padres bets.
I mean, the Padres are just crazy owned. I did not expect this coming through when I was refreshing this. I mean, it's 16.7% ownership share over on FanDuel, only a 7.8% chance of being the top stack. mean, they're just cheaper over there. I got to say there's definitely that. I mean, 4,700 Fernando Tatis over there is not cheap, but Machado's 3,600. You've got Cronenworth 3,300. You've got a number of these pieces. I mean, that would be something where maybe I'll play one or two in a cash lineup over there. But my God, it is definitely going to be a scary fade because, as you said, it's a fantastic spot, gives up a lot of righty power. We know Machado and Tatis just absolutely smoke the baseball on the one side. But, I mean, when you see something like this on a 15-game slate, is that just an automatic stay away for you, or are you going to still have some pieces of San Diego?
I'll probably still have some pieces because there's still ways that you can, stack this team and get some lower owned guys in there. Tatis, Machado, Grisham, Pham, all getting ownership. Myers around 10%. But, Cronenworth a little bit lower, Hosmer a little bit lower. But you can also just, be different with some pitching and stuff like that. So it's not, I probably won't get much as long as the ownership stays how it is because, we've already talked about several teams that are also in very good spots, whether that's Toronto or the Yankees that are lower owned. So I'll go to those teams first. But if I'm playing 150 lineups, I probably still end up with some San Diego just because they're so good.
And on the other side, Cincinnati, I mean, Blake Snell, yeah, he can definitely rack up Ks, but he can also give up 41.5% hard hit percentage, 477 expected slugging, walking dudes at a 13.2% clip. If things get wayward for him, he definitely can give you the potential with the Cincinnati offense that has their top of the order that also smokes the ball. I will say it's difficult for me because you have guys like Tyler Naquin that, I mean, he won't be in the lineup here. He'll be in the lineup here to start, but I mean, you just get so much pinch hitting risk with all of these dudes that aren't the top tier guys. Make for kind of good 3-mans in your 5-3 stacks if you're playing the top end of that lineup, perhaps. But what are you going to be doing with Cincinnati?
I think Cincy's kind of interesting because of their salaries as a team that you could use to, like, if you're looking to pay up for Woodruff and like Ray or something like that, which, again, on a 15-game slate, certainly plenty of ways you can go a pitcher. But I think the salaries are pretty appealing here because, of course, Blake Snell is good. But like you said, he does give up some power, particularly to right-handed hitters this year. He's allowed a 236 expected ISO. And there is plenty of right-handed power in this lineup for Cincinnati. You look at Castellanos, Tyler Stevenson, Eugenio Suarez, Aquino, like all these guys have power from the right side. And for the most part, they're unlikely to be pinch hit for, especially Suarez, Castellanos, and Stevenson. So there's a lot of upside there, I think, at a cheap price point. You, of course, would need Snell to really be off his game, but this is someone that is very capable of walking guys, putting some guys on base, just kind of turning the order over, getting extra at-bats for people, and then giving up, a 3-run home run. And then you get into the San Diego bullpen and, whatever happens. But the salaries compared to the amount of power in this lineup, I think is kind of appealing to me in tournaments, especially because it'll let you pay up for some good pitching.
I know Suarez has been so bad this year, but he is under 4K. He's 3,800 here in this spot. If he's going to be batting in the 5-hole, that's one individual hitter that I think I'll be plucking and trying to play in some of where I'm playing the pricier pitchers. Maybe 3,800 for him definitely looks like some spot that I can go. But as you said, I think that's the perfect way of putting it. The salary to power ratio is a little bit off here in that spot.
Yeah, it kind of just goes back to thinking about it in terms of what contests you're playing. Of course, you're not looking at guys against Blake Snell and Cash. The chances of them doing well are relatively low on the slate. But when you're just thinking about how can I get first place in a tournament, you get there by home runs, and the best, the most valuable home runs are the ones that you can get for the cheapest. When you look at this Reds lineup, there's just a lot of guys that have massive power and are cheap because of how difficult the matchup is. So, obviously in those large field tournaments, you're just kind of weighing the potential upside a little bit more than the actual median outcome like you would in cash.
Yeah. So one way that you did not win tournaments yesterday was playing the chalk cheap Detroit Tigers. So we're going to talk about them here now. So the Detroit Tigers plus 170 going up against Cleveland, 9.5 total runs here in this spot. You basically made your stand getting off of a lot of the Detroit Tigers and heading yourself over to Baltimore. I'd say that worked out pretty well, but 4.6 implied runs here, Cleveland 5.6. You got Jose Urena, who's he's the definition, I think, of a gas can at this point in time. He's never been good at any point in his Major League Baseball career in Miami or otherwise. This season, nothing's really changed. 46.3% hard hit percentage, only a 13.2% K percentage, not missing bats. Now you get a Cleveland lineup that has enough power in it, has some definite fantastic one-offs that we saw come to fruition from guys like Jose Ramirez yesterday that just went completely nuts. But JC Mejia may be a talking point, but Jose Urena totally not.
Yeah, Urena just not getting enough strikeouts here. I mean, he's 5,100, but I still just don't really see getting there. He's only struck out 8.6% of left-handed hitters this year. You look at the projected lineup for Cleveland, you have Cesar Hernandez, Ramirez, Eddie Rosario, Bobby Bradley, all from the left side in the top and middle of that order. Bradley Zimmer probably will be in there as well. It's just a really difficult spot to expect Urena to have any sort of success from a fantasy standpoint. He's done an okay job at limiting power, 178 expected ISO to lefties, 177 to righties, but it's still, a 5.5 implied run total for Cleveland. They just look like a pretty good offense. The one thing I guess kind of working against them is just like yesterday, they are relatively expensive given, for their upside and their talent levels. But we know the upside that Ramirez has. Eddie Rosario can certainly hit. Bradley has power. Hernandez and Rosario are actually pretty cheap at the top of the order. So it's still not a super difficult team to get to. It's probably not the best value team, and it's not the highest upside team. Right now, we actually have them projected for a little bit more ownership than their top stack percentage, but certainly interested in them, especially if that ownership comes down a little bit, because I do expect them to put the ball in play against Urena, and obviously that increases upside a bit.
0.00% top 2% pitcher percentage. That seems low. That seems not, that's just hilarious to me. I don't know. Every time you see somebody with 0, it's like, yeah, you're probably going to just take them out of your pool and call it a day. There's really nothing there. Talk to me on the other side. JC Mejia, it looks like he's working into games here. It came off of a 96 pitch, a 19.9 DraftKings outing here last time against Minnesota. Detroit is just so bad at preventing strikeouts, 26.5% strikeout percentage against righties here on the season, a 90 WRC plus, only a 156 ISO. I mean, this is definitely a team you want to pick on. Can we go to JC Mejia today?
I mean, I think it's reasonable. He's only 6,100 on DraftKings where you need the 2 pitchers, so you're saving some money there. Like you said, he's coming off of a 96 pitch outing, through 77 pitches the game before that. The Tigers are bad. I mean, it's a fully stretched out pitcher at 6,100 against the Tigers. I think that's enough to make someone a reasonable option. And then, you look at Mejia himself, not really a top prospect. Fangraphs has him as the number 46 prospect in the Indians organization. Looking at, AAA or his minor league numbers, he hadn't pitched above high A going into last season. And then, of course, last year, no minor league ball. So 2 starts at AAA this year, and then he's made 5 starts in the majors so far. 23.7% strikeout percentage is pretty good. 7.5% walk percentage isn't bad. It's just kind of a decent guy facing the Tigers at 6,100. I think it's definitely a reasonable option.
And we're seeing ownership again, 5.3% ownership share, which on a slate like this, if you just break it down, 30 teams that are in play tonight, if you were to make that 5%, I mean, they're 1 in 20. It's just a large number to see for Detroit. Only a 2.4% top stack percentage over on DraftKings here today. I think they're going to be a pass for me just because I think out of the cheapies, they're just a team people like to play. There's some guys with some power up and down that lineup, but feels like another easy pass for me.
Yeah, same boat. It's just they get ownership because if you were to just, go into Fantasy Cruncher or any optimizer and just take medium projections, not do anything to account for the volatility that hitters have, in particular in baseball, and just say like go, you're just going to get spit out a lot of lineups to say like Brandon Woodruff plus Robbie Ray plus whatever we can fit in. And what you can fit in is going to be a lot of Tigers. So that's why you're going to pretty much, you just kind of always get more ownership than they deserve on teams like that because there's enough people that are kind of like stuck in, they know to use optimizers in 2021 DFS, but they don't really know how to like use them correctly or get them to do what they really want them to do. And you just end up with people playing more guys from the Tigers and teams like that than they really should.
I also think some people are lazy, but that's a different conversation for a different day. I think it's easy to go in there and be able to just say, okay, I just want to jam in, whatever it spits out, because I think people take the optimizer and they say, I want you to tell me what the best lineups are and I'm going to play them, but they don't understand the overlap that has for everybody else who's using the same projections.
Yeah. And there's just a difference, especially in baseball, where you kind of have to account for, again, like the volatility in hitters. There's just that sort of that people think, oh, the optimizer gives me the answer. And it's more the optimizer just quickly does what if you're using it correctly, it's going to just quickly make lineups that you would want to play. So there's a difference there, even though it's kind of nuanced, but like there's a difference between just saying like, go with my projections and make good lineups that can win a tournament. And the Tigers typically are not in the latter.
And I mean, Fantasy Cruncher does an unbelievable job of being able to quickly and efficiently put together winning lineups for you. And the tools and all of the information that we have here at Awesemo can help you to create those inputs to be able to strategically put together a portfolio of lineups that can take you to the top. But it definitely does require, I think Alex talked about it perfectly. Like baseball is a great sport because you can log in 30 minutes before lineups lock. Like in NBA, you got to kind of know which players might be probable to sit out, do whatever else. It's not an easy thing to make on the fly. I think baseball, because there's so many numbers that we're able to quickly put into, you don't have to put in all the crazy amount of time on the front end. You can kind of play, hey, I'm going to play the top end of this stack and I'm going to combine them with a low owned piece on this side. And you can kind of put together some lineups on the hurry there. I would suggest spending some more time with it for sure, but definitely a nice sport to be able to quickly and efficiently put together winning lineups as need be, but just got to be able to tell it what you want it to. Anything else you want to talk about with the trade here? But Cleveland side seems like it's kind of the same thing. We're going a little bit over-owned, but I definitely would have more interest going to them against Urania, who's just so bad.
Yeah, I think that's about it. I haven't, obviously it's, 11:45 my time, so I haven't even started trying to build a cash lineup or anything. If I do get the Detroit Bats, that's the format that I would expect it to be in.
Akil Baddoo.
Yeah.
God, this guy, I needed him for whatever reason. I had like 2% of him yesterday and he's in the one lineup that I need him to do something. I got the big fat 0.
Yeah. Always seems to work out like that.
Yeah. And outfield, good thing there weren't any outfielders that went off yesterday. I don't know, the entire freaking slate. It seemed like we're going to keep it moving along. We've got the Mets and the Atlanta Braves here, plus 150. Atlanta 9 total runs here for this game. We've got on one side, Tyler McGill actually has an A value grade. That's an interesting thing to see. 4,900. That definitely helps my interest level in anybody, is if they're somewhat, if they can get by with 4.9K, that's a nifty spot to be looking at. And Charlie Morton, coming off his best start of the entire season, just looked phenomenal last time out. I feel like this is a spot where the Mets, I just continue to pick on them, but 32.3 DraftKings points, 38.8 DraftKings points his last two. Charlie Morton, stock trending up. Sticky stuff was hurting him.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, you got a couple of good starts from him his last, couple of times out after some hit or miss performances this year. Very, very reasonable price tag, I think, at 8,800. Only a 4 implied run total for the Mets. I think that all sets up pretty nicely for Morton, especially someone where in tournaments, if you are looking to save some money at pitcher and get some better bats into your lineup, you're not really sacrificing much upside. Is Brandon Woodruff a better pitcher than Morton? Absolutely. Is Robbie Ray going to project higher? Yeah, but Morton still gives you that ability to get 30 plus fantasy points while saving some money that you can, pour into bats. He struck out 26% of righties this year, 30% of lefties. Doesn't seem to have been hurt by the sticky stuff. Like you said, his, 2 of his best starts this season were in his last 2. So definitely interested in Charlie Morton here.
I'm also interested in Tyler McGill, and I don't really know what's going on here in this point in time. I mean, he's had one start. He's a 26-year-old, kind of came up. I'm going through some of his AAA stuff here. I'm pulling it up here now. It is not uploading for me, so I'll have to pull that up here in a second. But 1.15 whip, just the one start. I will say the one reason that I feel confident having even some exposure to him at 4,900 is simply seeing 92 pitches his last time out. He's under 5K. If I want to get completely different, completely punting with him is not the worst idea.
No, and I mean his, again, limited sample here, but his minor league strikeout stuff looked extremely good this year. In his one start in the majors, his plate discipline stuff wasn't any good. He had a 6.5% swinging strike percentage, but you're talking one start there. And I think the biggest takeaway, like you said, is the 92 pitches. He's not a top prospect. Fangraphs has him as the Mets number 23 prospect, not ranked overall. But he made 5 starts at AA this year. He struck out 40% of hitters that he faced. He made 3 starts at AAA, struck out 28% of hitters that he faced. I mean, if you're going to get someone with in the majors that even strikes out 21, 22%, of hitters, and he's going to be as cheap as he is on a slate that has Coors Field and has Brandon Woodruff and has Robbie Ray and has all these other guys that we want to pay for, there's certainly value. There's certainly merit there. Again, it just kind of comes back to Is he likely to do well against this Braves team? Not really, but he's cheap enough where he does let you get some other really high upside stuff into your lineup that can benefit you. And, if he does give you a serviceable start, you'll be in a good spot.
Jeff McNeil, the cash play du jour the other night being yesterday, if I want to be completely correct about that. But you got him at the top end of this order again, 3.2K, another guy that just continues to see his price drop on DK over on FanDuel. Seems like a spot where maybe a couple of spots, 2,600 is his price tag over there. Dom Smith probably going to be in the 3-hole. I would expect 2,700 on FanDuel over there too. So a pretty cheap stack to pair alongside them. And then the Braves side, I mean, we know that the murderers are at the top end here. I really have no interest in going to that backside of their lineup with Almonte, Heredia, Smith. Any of those guys on this slate probably going to be right off swarmy. But do you see anything differently there?
No, not really. I mean, from the Mets, I'm not really looking to pick on Charlie Morton. There are some good salaries on pretty good hitters like McNeil and Conforto, but again, 30 offenses to pick from. You're going to get some good salaries that aren't facing Charlie Morton as well. The Braves, of course, the more intriguing offense here, going up against a pitcher who is a very big question mark, has not a highly ranked prospect, has only made one major league start, certainly could just get lit up by the Braves. So people probably don't need you to say that Acuna, Freeman, Albies, Riley all give you plenty of upside here. Dansby Swanson at shortstop's fine as well. But like you said, the bottom of the order does get a little bit ugly for Atlanta. And I think that's enough to kind of move them behind some of these other teams that not only have higher implied run totals, but teams that we've talked about like the Blue Jays, like the Yankees, where you can find guys at the bottom of the order where you're not surprised if they hit a double and a home run. Whereas with the Braves, certainly any of these guys can homer, but if Abraham Almonte, or even better, if Guillermo Heredia comes out and scores 21 DraftKings points, you're going to be like, wow, I got really lucky. Whereas if Clint Frazier scores 21 DraftKings points, you're going to be like, yeah, okay, Clint Frazier does that.
That's the perfect way of putting it. Moving ourselves along to next up, Baltimore and Houston. We do not have I saw one book. I was trying to find a number for this. Minus 310 on the Houston Astros here in this spot with Jose Urquidy. Jose Urquidy. There we go. I just couldn't say it correctly. Jose Urquidy, I believe, is how you go about it. But been a very good real life pitcher. Only a 22.1% K percentage, but a walk rate under 5%, a 33.9% hard hit percentage on the entire season. Gets to face this Baltimore team, which is fun to pick on, except for, yesterday where they scored 9 runs and you had all of them and almost won all of the money in the world. So that would have been cool. And then on the other side, it looks like we're going to get a bullpen game, which normally isn't my favorite thing to target, but it might be my favorite thing to target in the entire world when it's the Baltimore Orioles bullpen.
Yeah, and they also had to use their bullpen a decent amount yesterday, which is worth mentioning. I'm pulling up their bullpen usage now to get exactly what it was, but 1, 2, 3. They used 5 different relievers. Paul Fry, Hunter Harvey, Adam Plutko, Tanner Scott, Cole Sulser, and Tyler Wells all pitched yesterday. Plutko only threw 6 pitches, so I'd assume he's available. But 24 from Scott, 37 from Sulser, 31 from Fry. Pretty decent chance none of those guys are being used today. So we could see Alex Wells get the start, but that would essentially mean a bullpen game. He threw 46 pitches on the 26th, so you're not really expecting him to go deep at all. It leaves you with guys like Dylan Tate, potentially Plutko, Travis Lakins. Certainly not a very scary bullpen here for the Orioles, and that's reflected in the 6.5 implied run total for Houston. Going right back to the well on the Astros. Alvarez and Altuve, very expensive. Gurriel priced up a bit. Correa is expensive. He also was injured yesterday, so he might not be in the lineup today. That's a spot that we'll have to keep an eye on, but it potentially, would open up another value piece on Houston. And then, Kyle Tucker, of course, a very strong play as well. So going right back to Houston after they, were relatively disappointing yesterday, I think another very good spot here against the Orioles.
And Robo Garcia, 43.2% hard hit percentage in a limited sample so far. A little bit of not a speedster or anything, but yeah, that definitely would be a nice value piece to also add into the lineup here if you did not get Correa. Makes the overall salaries that you're spending on that stack a little bit cheaper to go that direction. I'm very, very curious, and we'll be doing the deeper dive together here coming up this afternoon. So we get to kind of rehash all of our takes and be able to look at some updated ownership. I think Houston will be the most interesting team to be looking at. Right now, we have a top stack potential 7%. They're only being owned at 1%. That is obviously going to change very much. So I think it's just the uncertainty of who's going to be starting. I know Wells is probably going to be starting there. As you said, he got to mid-40s pitches in that first start that he got after his call-up. We'll kind of see how that turns out. But my God, it is hard not to love bullpen game, Baltimore Orioles in the same sentence.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's the reason that typically people don't like targeting bullpen games anymore is because the bullpens on most teams are just full of guys that throw 100 miles an hour and just go an inning and then get taken out. The Orioles, the Orioles bullpen is more consistent with like the mid 2000s when a bullpen game meant that you were just going to get absolutely lit up. Like back when teams used to actually want the starter to get out of the game because then they were going to bring in a bunch of bad pitchers. That's what the Orioles still have. So it's a different animal for the Orioles bullpen compared to most major league bullpens in 2021.
It's like Eric Sogard being effective for the Cubs. He was like the one dude yesterday who could shut down Milwaukee. It was so great. And then also, did you see he got his glove checked? What is up with these dudes getting their gloves checked?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you saw the Nick Maton check down like 12 runs or whatever pitching for the Phillies.
It's so great. Honestly, what are we doing here? 2021 is a wild place.
Yeah, it's insane.
Oh my God. But honestly, it just seeing Eric Sogard laugh about it, I think the umpire was being a little bit, I think he was joking around a little bit. He had to have been. No, he just had to. Minnesota plus 123, Chicago White Sox, 8.5 total runs here in this spot. In the Minnesota, we've got Kenta Maeda. Again, there's weather concerns. We've got Loco's always looking out for you guys here. It looks like it's going to be okay today. We've got under 40% chance of precipitation, humidity 77%, but 80 plus degrees. It would be, hey, I've got the wrong spot here. There we go. So 30% chance of precipitation, 85% humidity, wind blowing out there in Chicago, 77 degrees. I think it's going to be okay this time around, but Maeda and Giolito. So now we're adding Giolito to this slate. I also have to say that his price just took a plummet off of the last slate. Maybe yesterday because it was a shorter slate. They didn't want to make Giolito super accessible, but my God, he's probably my favorite pitcher to be targeting over on the DraftKings side. Only 8,700. That's just a ridiculous number. Maeda, 7K, a lot more appealing would have been yesterday's slate, but today probably not going to be getting there as much. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I love the salary on Giolito. I mean, yesterday we kind of talked about him as the clear third guy behind Peralta and Bauer because it's a relatively difficult matchup against Minnesota. But when you get this huge price discount, and like you said, I don't know if it's that he went down because it's a 15-game slate. I don't know if it's that his price decreased because there was something wrong with DraftKings algorithm and they didn't think he was going to pitch today since he was scheduled yesterday. I don't know what the reason is, but $8,700 for Lucas Giolito is very, very cheap, regardless of who he's facing. 32.8% strikeout percentage against lefties, 28.9% against righties this year. He's given up some power, particularly to righties with a 286 ISO, but a 206 expected ISO. But still, you're talking about a very, very talented pitcher that you're getting a price discount on in Giolito. I think Kenta Maeda is still he's certainly in that bucket for me with like Jamison Taillon and Snell and whoever else we talked about, Vince Velasquez. In that like 7K range where I'm not super confident. I don't love the matchup. The White Sox are a very talented offense. They have a lot of power. Kenta Maeda, like we talked about yesterday, has certainly been up and down this season. But 7K, in tournaments, only in tournaments, but 7K is still someone that I wouldn't be surprised if I get him into some tournament lineups just because I end up paying up for bats that I really want.
Yeah, I don't know. He continues to be somebody that puzzles me because, only a 21.7% K percentage, but he is 7K. So you're getting a little bit of savings there as well off of guys in that mid-range like Snell, like Taillon, like Velasquez. So even those little bit of savings can go a long way to make sure that you can get different with your stack and get up to some more bats. But I don't know. I could maybe get a little bit. You can talk me into it at this point in time.
Yeah, to me, it's more of like a 150 lineup play than Remax play or something like that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Giolito is a play him everywhere play.
Sure.
And that's kind of the way that I see that.
Yep.
Still, the Twins, they do have enough power on the other side of it. Just not going to be the spot for me to go pick on Giolito by any means. If I did, I think I would probably be going to like a Kepler-Kirilloff kind of combination, maybe a Nelson Cruz, because we know he can hit homers against anybody. We're seeing completely 0% ownership on all of these dudes. So there's another reason to maybe do that with a team with as much pop as what the Twins have. But I don't want to do it today.
No, me neither. I mean, I mentioned yesterday that Giolito's stolen base issues have started to come back a bit as well. But again, it's a 15-game slate. This is a game too where like the weather doesn't seem particularly conducive for hitting. On the East Coast, the ball should be flying tonight. It looks cold and rainy-ish in Chicago, so not the same hitting weather. A very good pitcher in Giolito, and yeah, I think just a completely different spot than we were talking about yesterday, where I thought maybe there was some merit to leveraging against him. Today, I'm just more inclined to roster Giolito and not worry about the Twins.
And then on the other side, we've got the Chicago White Sox, as you said. Maeda, sure, go ahead and have some shares there. 41.6% hard hit percentage on the season, 460 expected slugging. He does limit walks, so maybe not keeping the line moving there, but there's some isolated guys that I want to be going after. Specifically, the one guy that sticks out the most to me is Brian Goodwin, potentially hitting in the 2-hole. I would expect him to hit in the 2-hole here in this spot. Only 3,100 over on DK. That feels like a really nice price tag to be getting. Maybe cashy, but even as a one-off in tournaments, I think there's enough pop there where if he's under 5%, he just makes a fantastic play.
Yeah, I like the White Sox here just in general. They're not a particularly high top stack percentage, only coming in at about 2%, but only about 1.5% ownership share right now. This is another team kind of like Cincinnati, where not to say Kenta Maeda is as good as Blake Snell, but it's a pitcher that normally isn't going to get blown up, but does give up some power, a little bit over a 200 expected ISO to hitters from both sides of the plate. And there's no shortage of power on this White Sox team with Tim Anderson, Moncada, Grandal, Jake Lamb and Andrew Vaughn, both flawed hitters, but have some pop. There's a lot of upside on the White Sox at pretty reasonable prices. So to me, that's a team that becomes very, very appealing in tournaments, despite not having the best matchup.
I got to jump back. I skipped KC in Boston, which is kind of an important one to be going to. You've got this list of 15 teams, and I'm just kind of clicking on them as I go down the line. But KC Boston, considering Boston has just a massive implied total here on this slate, seems like an important spot to be talking about. Plus, what is it? Right now, it opened plus 193 here for Kansas City. You've got 6.4 implied runs. I believe that's the largest. It's even more than even the Coors Field spot. So definitely an important spot to talk about. Brad Keller on one side, Nick Pivetta on the other. Nick Pivetta had a really nice outing last time. It was nice to see him kind of get right a little bit there. And Brad Keller, oh, he's not right. He is very, 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 very bad. That was enough varies, I think, for it. 544 expected slugging, 46.3% hard hit percentage. It is hot. It is muggy there in Boston. It is 90 degrees, 65% humidity, winds blowing out once again. How do you not like the Red Sox here?
Yeah, there's, to me, no real reason not to. Like, Brad Keller is one of these pitchers that briefly was really frustrating to roster hitters against in DFS because he didn't miss bats, but he somehow would just get a lot of ground balls and not get blown up. We're finally seeing what happens to pitchers in 2020 and 2021 when they pitch to contact, and that is the Brad Keller is getting absolutely destroyed. 234 expected ISO to lefties, 234 expected ISO to righties. Doesn't really care what side of the plate you hit from. He's going to give it up, and you get some pretty strong options from the Red Sox. The lineup probably will look a little bit different than it did yesterday against the lefty Duffy, but you're probably going to get Verdugo at a pretty good price point towards the top of that order. You still can, of course, look to Martinez, Bogarts, Devers in the middle. Hunter Renfroe, I think, is an interesting one if he's in the lineup, because typically he's someone that we think of as like a really good hitter, particularly against left-handed pitching. But I think a big reason for that is he's very strikeout prone, and typically right-handed pitchers are going to have an easier time striking him out than lefties. Brad Keller doesn't strike guys out, especially righties. He's only struck out 14.5% this year. So it kind of sets up as a weird spot for someone like Renfroe if he is in the lineup, because he's just much more likely to make contact against a pitcher like Keller than he is against most right-handed pitchers. And it's going to make it so the splits, I think, are a little bit less important than you see at times with Renfroe. So he's someone that you could definitely go back to if he's in the lineup too.
That is a great point. And I absolutely love playing Renfroe. I think in any spot where he's going to be batting fourth or fifth in this lineup, the power potential is just off the charts with him all the time. 15-degree launch angle on the season. There's nothing that you don't like about Hunter Renfroe. One of my buddies played AAA ball with him and just said that he is a country strong boy. I'm like, that's probably the right way of putting it for Hunter Renfroe. He likes his country music. He just kind of like lives to his own beat. Very quiet dude. Hits baseballs far. KC. Not exactly the worst spot. So I know Nick Pivetta might be a guy that I go to a little bit, 27.6% K percentage. I mean, it's a tough spot in terms of just like relative to other people in his range, but I think there is some power potential. And considering the nice hitting environment here at Fenway Park today, 40.3% hard hit percentage against Pivetta this season, 16.4 degree launch angle, there might be some strong power potential, specifically at the top of this lineup with KC.
Yeah, kind of interested in both sides here because right now, Pivetta, again, only projected for like 2% ownership on DraftKings. He falls into that same category currently as Tyler Rogers, where he's not someone that's going to be very easy to get to. You know, like from an optimal build, if you're in that price range, you're going to go to Lucas Giolito for $300 less at 8,700. But in tournaments, Pivetta still does give you a pretty nice ceiling. The Royals only have a 4.3 implied run total. He strikes guys out. So I have some interest there if the ownership stays really low. He's the type of guy you could use if you are going to a more popular stack. As far as KC hitters go, though, there is some upside here because Pivetta, we know, does give up power. Jorge Soler has certainly had his struggles recently, but if he's hitting second at 3,400, that's a guy that we know has massive power. Carlos Santana's salary is very reasonable at 4,400. Merrifield and Perez obviously are good. They're also expensive. Ryan O'Hearn's cheap. Emmanuel Rivera is still the minimum salary if you are looking to go a more, if you're looking to pay off for two pitchers like Ray Woodruff and you need a 2K guy. So I'm not enamored with Kansas City. I'm not enamored with Pivetta. I would think that most of my tournament lineups just have nothing from either team. But I do think that both sides are interesting enough to pay attention to ownership. If Pivetta stays around 2%, he's certainly a guy that has the potential to be a top 2 pitcher. Right now, we have him with a 8% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, only projected for about 3% ownership. Kansas City, certainly has power upside because anyone who's played DFS for a while has probably fallen in love with Pivetta at different points, and then also just seen him give up home run after home run after home run when he's in half of your lineup. So it can definitely go either way with Pivetta.
Yep, it's the absolute worst. We've got 4 games. We've got 16 minutes. Yeah, 15 minutes, basically 4 per. We can fly. We can do this thing. Arizona, St. Louis. That's our next one on the board here. We've got 4.5 implied runs for Arizona, 5.2 for St. Louis here. Caleb Smith on one side. I actually have some interest in going to him here at 6,600. Looking over at the top pitchers tool, 6.6% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Again, there's 30 pitchers on this slate, so there's that. Only 6% ownership. I think that the K's could possibly be there for him. Obviously, it's freaky to target a lefty or to be playing a lefty up against these righty-heavy Cardinals lineup that we're looking at here with Goldschmidt, Arenado, and O'Neill on that top end of it. And then on the other side, Carlos Martinez. And if he were to ever be viable, which he still isn't for me today, this would be the spot against Arizona, who against righties, 81 WRC plus, 24.6% K percentage isn't the best, but I mean, I'm still probably not going to do it today.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to make an argument for Martinez, it would again just be that he's facing a bad team. He's around 7K, but even out of those other 7K guys we've talked about, I think I have them ahead of Martinez, just not striking guys out anymore. Like a 16% strikeout percentage to righties, 14% to lefties. If I'm going to those guys, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Velasquez at the top. Even though the Diamondbacks aren't very good, there's actually still, I think, a little bit higher floor in guys that can rack up strikeouts on their own and aren't reliant on their opponent. Compared to guys that just don't get strikeouts because you're more vulnerable to just bad luck on balls in play when you roster guys that can't get out of it with strikeouts. So, Martinez certainly someone that could show up. You're playing 150 lineups. It's not like someone I would X out of my player pool or anything, but I'd expect that I'm getting to these other 7K guys ahead of him. And I'm with you on Caleb Smith. It's just a cheap price tag for someone that does get strikeouts. The big issue with Smith is that he walks a ton of guys. So you're putting guys on base. That obviously increases the risk of a bad start. It also drives up your pitch count and makes it difficult to go deeper into games. But he did throw 101 pitches last time out, 91 the previous start, 103 before that. If he can give you 5 or 6 innings at 6,600, he's pretty likely to give you a decent outing for his score just based on the fact he strikes out about 26% of hitters. If you happen to somehow luck into a start where Caleb Smith doesn't walk guys, he has the potential to actually put up a very, very good score because his strikeout stuff's so good. The issue is, like I said, it's just pure luck because the guy walks a bunch of guys every single start.
I'm hoping that because the Cardinals just don't seem to walk at a high clip. So outside of Carlson and DeYoung, who's probably going to be 1 hole and 8 hole if things are kind of holding true with what that line has been here of late, you've got nobody else. Goldschmidt only an 8.4% walk percentage. Arenado 6.9. Yadier Molina 6.7. I mean, these guys just don't walk a whole lot. Tyler O'Neill 5.8. Edmund 5. Sosa, if he's in the lineup, 4.3. I mean, there just aren't a lot of guys who are willing to sit on pitches and to be able to walk in these spots. Is that correct?
Yeah. It kind of just comes down to Caleb Smith is so bad at throwing strikes that they'll probably still walk anyway. But yeah, I mean,
he's gonna fucking suck anyway.
Right? Yeah. But I mean, what you're saying is definitely true. Like if you were talking about, I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but like back in the day when like the Red Sox were a team that just like took a million pitches and worked counts and walked a lot. Like obviously, a guy like Smith is much more likely to struggle with a team like that than with a more free swinging, less patient team like you see with the Cardinals.
So Arizona, if I'm going to be playing a couple guys, I mean, Eduardo Escobar just kind of sticks out to me as like a guy that I'm going to have exposure to on the slate. Hasn't been a great hard hit percentage, but 454 expected slugging feels like a one-off spot for him, for me. I don't know how I feel about the full stack. I know that you were talking about that a little bit. And then the St. Louis side, I mean, I like Caleb Smith a lot, but I'm definitely going to have Cardinals bats because it's just so, I mean, that Goldschmidt and Arenado combo, when that pops, you just want to be a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as far as Arizona goes, I'm not really interested there. I would say that they are extremely inexpensive. So they're a team that you could use like the Tigers. They right now are getting about the same ownership, actually a little bit more ownership than the Tigers. But they're a team where if you were looking to pay up for pitching, which again, I don't think is a necessity on the slate, you could go there. From the Cardinals, though, I think that's where you're getting most of the upside here. Caleb Smith does walk guys, puts guys on base. You can certainly see how he could just, run into a pretty bad start pretty quickly. And you do have a lot of right-handed power in this lineup. Carlson, switch hitter, but Goldschmidt, Arenado, O'Neill, Molina, Edmonds, a switch hitter. This lineup's probably going to be entirely right-handed, which isn't necessarily like a deal breaker for Smith. He's only allowed a 168 expected ISO. He struck out 26.5% of righties. But just talking from a pure upside standpoint, you've got a lot of guys with, the platoon advantage that have power here.
All right, well, let's go to Coors Field. This is definitely a talking point on this slate for sure. Pittsburgh plus 162, Colorado 11 total runs here for this game, 6.4 implied for Colorado. Pittsburgh as well. Chase DeYoung on one side. Producer Tyler before the show wanted to let it be known that Bernard Longer's daughter is ending up marrying. We don't have time for this stuff. We don't have time for sidebars here at this point in time. Whatever. But I was just giving Tyler some credit here. Bernard Longer's his father-in-law. Good story, good times. He screwed up telling that to me as well. So whatever. I don't care anymore. Chase DeYoung on one side, and on the other side, we've got Herman Marquez, who's been a very good pitcher here of late for sure. I think he's been a good pitcher overall for his entire career. Somebody that I think just because of that launch angle, keeping it down 4.3 degrees, keeping it down in Coors Field, definitely a plus. Hard hit percentage also down, limits that hard contact 35.6%. K percentage 23.4%. I don't know how I feel going up against a bunch of these lefties that exist in this Pittsburgh lineup. I mean, they're not the hardest hitting dudes, but between Polanco, Brian Reynolds, enough guys that could possibly do some damage. Moran probably isn't in that lineup, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because he does strike out a 26.4% clip, but another guy who could have been doing some damage. But talk to me about the pitching here.
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm going to end up with one of these pitchers, it's pretty obviously going to be Marquez because he's just a good pitcher. Coors, of course, is an issue, especially when you're talking about a slate this big and so many pitchers to choose from. One thing I will be paying attention to with Marquez is what exactly the Pirates lineup looks like, because you mentioned that average strikeout percentage for Marquez, but it's actually split pretty heavily righties versus lefties. He struck out 28.5% of righties this year. He's only struck out 19.7% of lefties. So I think if you, for some reason, were to get a Pittsburgh lineup that is righty heavy, it's actually a pretty sizable bump for Marquez. Whereas even if the lefties aren't very good, if it's lefty heavy, it does downgrade him a bit because he's just not as good at striking them out. It's not that they hit him really well. They only have a 114 expected ISO, but you're not rostering guys in DFS hoping for some ground balls to second base. You're looking for the strikeouts, and he's got a very, very big gap in his strikeout numbers between righties and lefties. And that's something we've seen in the past as well. So my overall interest in Marquez will depend on this lineup, but from a more general standpoint, very talented pitcher in Coors Field on a 15-game slate, mild interest in, 150 lineup stuff, but not somebody I would be going out of my way to get to unless we get a really weird Pirates lineup that's like righty heavy and bad.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh going a little bit overowned, it looks like. But, I mean, you have Gamble at 2K. He's probably going to be in the lineup on DraftKings. Polanco's 3K going to be in the lineup. Brian Reynolds, 3,700. I mean, your three outfielders for Pittsburgh alone require spending no money whatsoever. I think you're going to see some massive ownership probably on those guys because it's Coors Field and people are going to click that button. I would have more interest just making sure that I got to the top end to Adam Frazier. Brian Hayes, he's a righty up against Marquez. As you said, you alluded to the splits. Looking at it this morning, it was definitely a spot where I think Marquez looks like you're going to probably wanted to target a lot of these lefties. I do think that's a great point, making sure that if Morant isn't going to be in that lineup, if you got somebody like, I guess it would be Phillip Evans at first base that would probably be filling in, that would be a sizable bump for him.
Yeah, for sure. And also just looking at the pricing, you mentioned how cheap some of these Pittsburgh guys are. This seems like it's going to be a slate that's really dumb for cash games, I think. Just really, really annoying. Like, you just have a bunch of really cheap hitters in Coors Field that are going to project really well, and everybody's going to play them, and it's just going to be a lot of overlap. So really wish the pricing were better. But in tournaments, that does give you a little bit of a path to success, because you can kind of just say, like we talked about with the Tigers earlier, like we talked about with the Tigers yesterday, yes, obviously the Pirates are viable. They're visiting Coors Field. It's a huge ballpark bump, all of that. But at the same time, they're facing a good pitcher in Marquez. There's a lot of times this game plays out and the Pirates just score 3-4 runs and they don't do anything for you in tournaments. And a lot of people will play these guys because a 3K Gregory Polanco, for example, is going to pop into a lot of lineups just based on his medium projection. So I think it's a spot you can take advantage of in tournaments. It's probably going to make cash games just a little bit annoying.
Definitely. And then Colorado, I mean, we can definitely fire up Colorado up against Chase DeYoung. I think my favorite up and down the line of Brian McMahon, a guy who's just been absolutely smoking the ball this season. 48.1% hard hit percentage, 92 mile per hour exit velocity, 489 expected slugging. That is the best on this Colorado Rockies team. Who are you kind of targeting? I mean, all the dudes, right?
Yeah, I mean, all the dudes, but I'm with you on McMahon. He's looked really good. Charlie Blackmon, of course. Trevor Story, of course. Story, someone you could use, if you are going to get 35% ownership going to Fernando Tatis. Story is a logical guy that you could use for $100 more. But yeah, I mean, the whole team looks good. Chase DeYoung, not someone that really misses a ton of bats. He has actually struck out 27% of righties this year, 19.4% of lefties. Going back, to previous seasons, he's more of like a 22% strikeout percentage guy against righties. So I think obviously the Rockies are in a better spot than the Pirates here.
Texas Rangers plus 165 going into Oakland, 8.5 total runs here in this spot. We're not going to be targeting a ton of hitting more than likely for the Texas Rangers going up against James Caprillion. You want to talk about splits? Definitely another guy who's got some splits, but much better against righties here. Been pretty darn unhittable against righties, it looks like. But Willie Calhoun probably going to move up there. Joey Gallo, maybe some lefties to be targeting there. But Caprillion coming in right around 50% ownership over on DK. I think that sounds about right. Looking at his price over on FanDuel, probably not a lot of interest at 8K when you can go to Blake Snell for 100 more. You can go down to somebody like Nick Pivetta, 7,700, or maybe a little bit cheaper. I actually don't mind him. 8K over on FanDuel, I could probably fire that up a little bit, but talk to me about pitching here.
Yeah, I don't mind Caprillion. 8K is fine, especially on the two-pitcher side on DraftKings. It's a good matchup against Texas. It's supposed to be like 60 degrees in Oakland. So again, a slate where you're getting a lot of favorable hitting weather. You're getting a favorable park for pitchers and some pretty cool weather there as well. Plenty of strikeouts in the Rangers lineup typically. Caprillion is someone that we've seen actually. I was looking at spin rate numbers this morning. He's seen a pretty big drop in his spin rate on his fastball in particular. But so far, it hasn't had a negative impact on much of anything else. His expected WOBA after the sticky stuff crackdown's actually gone down. His called plus swinging strike percentage has actually gone up. So I'm not too concerned, at least as of right now. It doesn't seem like it's having too much of a negative effect overall. So, I think Caprilion's fine at AK. Threw like 82 pitches last time out. Pretty good matchup against Texas. No issues there.
Yeah, I like him. I mean, former first round pick, 2015. It's kind of strange to see him kind of be the guy that pops with all the other arms that Oakland has had in their stable here, that he ends up being the guy that it seems like is going to be that he's going to be the one who ends up panning out here. Got him from the Yankees in 2015. But anyway, Mike Foltynewicz on the other side. I'm not going to even say his name. Maybe play some Oakland bats. As you said, the hitting environment isn't great, but you can always play Matt Olson against righties, and specifically Mike Foltynewicz, who sucks.
That's a nice way of putting it.
There you go. Yeah.
He has struck out 13.6% of lefties this year, and he has allowed a 295 expected ISO to lefties. The hitting environment here is not good, as you said, but certainly can look at some one-offs in Olson at an exorbitant $5,900 DraftKings salary. It's going to make him very low owned. Mitch Moreland, though, the kind of value option there, 3,800. You can look to Jed Lowry. Again, it's just not a team that it's not a ballpark or hitting environment that I'm super excited about. It seems pretty unlikely that this is the game, a game that blows up in those conditions. But Fulton Ivich is very bad.
San Francisco Giants plus 143, Dodgers 7.5 total runs here in this spot. We're going to take this home. You got Kevin Gausman on one side, definitely somebody I'm going to have some in some lineups under 5% over on DraftKings. I think that as bad of a matchup as the Dodgers can be, I think I'm still going to have some Gausman because of how good Gausman has been this season. Same thing with Walker Buehler. Definitely going to be much, much more heavily owned, as he should be in this spot. But both of these pitchers going to be guys that I'm going to get to on this slate. Are you going to be doing the same?
Yeah. I mean, Gausman, I think, obviously has a very, very difficult matchup. But like you said, he's been great. He finally figured out that if you have like the best splitter / changeup / whatever it is in baseball,
throw it.
And you throw it more, you get better results. I wish he'd figured it out with the Orioles, but better late than never. And, so he has a 30+% strikeout percentage against hitters from both sides of the plate this year. He's allowed very little power, 129 expected ISO to righties, 144 to lefties. It's a very difficult matchup. And I think that basically the argument that you would make for Gausman is the same argument I made for Trevor Rogers, the same argument that I made for, I think, Pivetta. Low ownership, not the best matchup, but very, very good stuff. Certainly capable of giving you a very good start. Not someone I'm looking at in cash games, not someone I would be going out of my way to get to if I'm playing like 3 max, but certainly someone who has the upside to be a very, very good option. And then Buehler, I think, looks good as well. Woodruff, we skipped the Woodruff game. Woodruff.
Oh my God. How did I miss that? We're going to have to finish out with that, of course. Good Lord.
Woodruff, I think clearly the top option here, but Buehler not too far behind, 3.4 implied run total for the Giants. Buehler, mid-20 strikeout percentage, just a very good pitcher overall.
Yeah, what happened is in the Baltimore Houston game, I basically, after I skipped and realized that I skipped one other game, I came back and did that. I don't feel so bad about that. I mean, 15 games going through this sheet, and every game is listed differently on every single site. So I'm just keeping my head above it. But nobody to talk about bats here, right?
No.
Yeah, that's just a big
pass. Yeah, the only thing to say is the Dodgers are really good if you're just looking to get like a low-owned team with really good hitters. But again, there's so many teams on this slate that you can just find better options.
All right, and now to close it out, let's talk about Brandon Woodruff specifically. There's really nothing that I want to say about Zach Davies. He's too expensive to be playing just about anywhere. 2.3% chance of being the top pitcher or top 2 pitcher on DraftKings, only 0.5% ownership. That's about the only case I can make for him whatsoever. But obviously, Brandon Woodruff, the huge talking point, by far the highest chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 28.3% pitcher percentage, ownership right around 37% right now. That sounds about right. Clicking over on FanDuel, 9.7% chance of being the top pitcher, 16.2% ownership. Both of those, though, are leading the slate as well. I mean, there's really nothing you can say negative about what Brandon Woodruff has done this season. He limits hard contact. He keeps the ball down. He strikes out 31% of batters. I mean, this is just a fantastic spot for him against a Cubs lineup that against righties just doesn't do a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, excellent pitcher. I mean, the only negative is that on DraftKings, he's $11,000, and you do have a lot of bats to pay for. You have a lot of pitchers that at least have some viable chance of success. It's a spot where in larger field tournaments, if he is getting this much ownership, you certainly I wouldn't say it's wrong to just not have as much Brandon Woodruff as the field. Know that you're going to be able to get some different lineup builds that way, and then just hope that because if he goes and scores 22 DraftKings points at 11K, there's enough pitchers on this slate. Obviously there's question marks about which ones are going to have success. There's going to be guys a lot cheaper than him that score that many or more fantasy points. So that's kind of the argument against him, but you also, you're not trying to make the perfect lineup because it's impossible. You're just trying to make a bunch of really, really good lineups. And Woodruff, you certainly can make very good lineups around Brandon Woodruff. Like you said, he's an excellent combination of strikeouts and limiting power. So I think, very clearly a top pitcher option. He's someone that I would fully expect to have in cash for sure.
Yep, same thing. I'm not going to be playing any Cubs here on this side, even if Jock were yesterday. I was fine taking a one-off Jock against Freddie Peralta here or there, and ended up being Javi Baez the way you are there. But Milwaukee Brewers put up 14 runs last night. Now they get a nice matchup against Zach Davies here. I will say they are so damn expensive over on DraftKings. $5,300 for Urias. Again, what are we doing here? Yelich, $5,800. Adames, $4,600. Narvaez, $4,700. I mean, it's a team that I can't get to a lot of just because of the price tags, but you can't say the ceiling isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, the ceiling's there. It's just there's a lot of teams that I feel that way about that are at price points that are like not the best, but they're really, really good hitters. And the Brewers, I don't think are quite there. And like Zach Davies, he doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but he does an okay job limiting power. 183 expected ISO to righties, 161 to lefties. I mean, the Brewers are fine. I just don't anticipate getting much of them. Kind of the same situation we were in yesterday.
All righty. Well, that's about all we got here. I mean, we flew through that at the very end, got mixed up with the two games there, but glad we were able to fit them in. Play Brandon Woodruff. How about that for analysis? Anything you want to finish out to tell the people before this afternoon?
Just one, I guess, like housekeeping note. The Orioles announced Travis Lakins will be making the start.
Ooh.
That doesn't really change anything. It's just a different name than Alex Wells.
Oh, yeah. So now we're going to get Houston even lower owned because of, no, we're not. We're absolutely not going to get that. That's sad. Guys, we will catch you again this afternoon. It's going to be Adam and I once again here on the Deeper Dive, leading you up to Greg and Terry doing the Live Before Lock, and then NBA Live Before Lock sitting there at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. That's leading up to the 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time tip of the Bucks-Hawks Game 4. Definitely check that out. If you could, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell on the way out. We'll be doing 15 games again this afternoon. He's Adam. I'm Eric. We'll catch you later.